Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I can hear you too. If I'm too loud, then let me know. We can fix it.
Sorry, it was echoing with Hayes' phone.
Oh, is it better now?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Welcome.
that better? Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone, for being patient. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right.
Director Rosen, if I might, as a point of information, we have translation services tonight, so it is essential that everybody with a microphone press the button red to speak so that it will work properly. Thank you.
And they also have a couple of guidelines, so if they will come up to the podium and share, please.
Okay.
Hola, buenas tardes. Gracias por tenernos aquí, a Les y yo, para proporcionar interpretación del inglés español y español en inglés. Thank you so much for having Les and myself here to provide interpretation from Spanish to English and English to Spanish. Si alguien desea un dispositivo de interpretación, pueden acercarse a la mesa y con gusto le podemos ayudar. If anybody would like an interpreting device, please head over to the table and we'll be happy to give you one. Un par de pautas, voy al inglés y después al español. Just a few guidelines. There's expansion in Spanish. It takes 30% more to say the same thing. We ask if you can keep a moderate pace. If you are a quick speaker, if you could just take breaths between sentences. We might do these hand signals that if there's sign language interpreting, they don't do it. But if just language interpreting, just to, like a little reminder to slow down. We ask if you can please speak into the microphone because we're competing with our own voices. Proper names and acronyms, if you could just say them loud and clear. We want to capture your message to the best we can. Solo un recordatorio, que si pueden hablar a un ritmo moderado, tal vez hacemos señales de mano, que no hacemos si hay intérpretes de seña, pero está bien si solo hay interpretación de idiomas. Nombres propios, si pueden decir alto y claro. Y si pueden respirar entre oraciones. Muchas gracias. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. I'll try and speak slowly because I have a tendency to get excited and speak fast. So, yes, and I'll make sure that my mic's on. Sorry, that's another thing. We're still learning, so thank you. All right, so I have nothing to report out of closed session. And move on to oral communications, introduction of new employees.
Can I do a roll call?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Director Hatcher,
Here.
Director Lamnon. Here. Director Andrade,
Here.
Director Hodges,
Here.
President Rosen.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, now on to introduction of new employees.
Jerry Reginald will be presenting the first employee. I think that's where I had it on my.
Good evening, directors. I'd like to introduce my new employee, Antonio Vaca.
Sorry, Carrie, could you move closer to the mic, please? Thank you.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, good evening. I'd like to introduce my new employee, Antonio Vaca Delgado. He came to us in 2024 as a custodial aide and has now progressed to full-time. Previous to us, he worked for a company called CW Building Maintenance and worked for them for most of his career of 20 years. It dissolved in 2020, and he's happy to work with us now, and we're very blessed to have his skills. He supervised the company, a whole team by himself with housekeeping staff for business all around the Bay Area. So we're very happy. Outside of work, Antonio enjoys exploring new places and going on adventures with his family. The last place he visited was Cancun. For the next excursion, Antonio and his wife are planning a road trip to Cabo. We are happy to have Antonio to support our parks and facilities maintenance team and for the full-time staff. He has been wonderful with us. His skills are incredible. I never have to go behind him and see if he's doing a job well done. He aces it every time.
Well, thank you, board directors. I'm so happy to work for Hard. This is a pleasure for me, and I don't have no words. I'm a Hayward resident for 15 years, and I'm so happy to be part of this. All right, thank you again.
Excellent. And we have another employee.
Good evening, Honorable
Can I
Board.
ask a question first? So you're gonna drive down Baja California all the way? From say, I've done that. That's awesome. I wish you and your family luck and have a good time.
Yes.
Good evening, Honorable Board of Directors. So I have the distinct honor of reintroducing Christopher Costanzo, who prefers to go by CJ, as he rejoins the Hard team as our new business manager to the Parks Department. So prior to returning to Hard, CJ was at Resonate Church, where he was a facilities manager, managing buildings, daily operations, and business functions across 3 locations. His former supervisor and peers acknowledge that CJ is customer service oriented, strategic, knows how to build rapport, and can effectively communicate with all levels of an organization. Overall, CJ is a great guy to have on the team, and he is approachable and knowledgeable. After being at Hard from 2019 to 2021 and gaining experience with parks, CJ took it upon himself to take training in facility maintenance to become more well-rounded. In his spare time, in addition to spending time with his family, CJ likes to help others with their gardens, as he cares a great deal about plants and is praised for his expertise in horticulture. We are happy to have CJ return to our Parks and Facilities Maintenance team, and we're ready to put him to work.
There, but when it's ready.
Okay, there we go. Board and everybody here, I'm just honored and I feel the privilege to come back. To be to what's gone on. I was telling Jim earlier today, just in the last 3 years, just to see what has been accomplished. It's exciting to be a part of that team. It's exciting the vision. It's exciting what's happened. It's exciting what's going to be happening. And I just find it, I feel very blessed and privileged and honored and to have this opportunity. So I look forward to working with you and everybody else. So yeah, thank you.
Great. Well, Rick, go ahead.
Yeah, CJ, we had some great conversations when you were here, and I really look at what is being created here at Hard. You really embodied a lot of it. The family, the care, the consideration, and some of our chats around the urban farm movement and what's happened here at Hard. I'm really happy to have you back, to see your family here and your friends, to celebrate you, and we got some great work ahead. So thanks for coming back.
Yeah, thank you. My pleasure.
Yes, and we're excited to have you back.
Yeah.
Yes. Get another excited in there. So thanks. Yes. All right. With that being said, we are on to Hispanic Heritage Month proclamation.
Dear Honorable Board of Directors, Nicole Espinoza Roa, Public Information Officer and Assistant to the General Manager. This evening I share our proclamation, the Hispanic Heritage Month proclamation. Whereas Hayward Area Recreation and Park District is welcoming and inclusive and dedicated to improving the quality of life for those we serve. And whereas what began in 1968 as Hispanic Heritage Week under President Johnson and was expanded by President Reagan in 1988 to cover a 30-day period starting on September 15th, the United States observes Hispanic Heritage Month, and whereas Hispanic Heritage Month celebrates the histories, cultures, and contributions of those ancestors were indigenous to North America, as well as Spain, Mexico, the Caribbean, and Central and South America. And whereas the purpose of Hispanic Heritage Month is to create awareness of the contributions of the people of Hispanic heritage to the American culture, Many people of Hispanic heritage serve as civil rights leaders and community organizers, politicians, teachers, journalists, first responders, artists, healthcare professionals, athletes, inventors, entertainers, and more. And whereas Hispanic Heritage Month is tied to the celebration of the rich tapestry of our community and reflects an array of distinct cultures. Now therefore, the Hayward Area Recreation and Park District Board of Directors do hereby proclaim September 15th through October 15th as Hispanic Heritage Month and invite the community to learn more of the Hispanic culture, people, traditions, and values that have positively enriched our community.
Mes de la Cultura Hispana. Considerando que Hayward Area Recreation and Park District es inclusivo y acogedor y se dedica a mejorar la calidad de la vida de aquellos a quienes sirve, y considerando que lo que comenzó en 1968 como la Semana de la Cultura Hispana bajo el presidente Johnson y fue ampliado por el presidente Reagan en 1988 para cubrir un periodo de 30 días a partir del 15 de septiembre, los Estados Unidos observa el mes de la cultura hispana. Y considerando que el mes de la cultura hispana celebra las historias, culturas y contribuciones de aquellos cuyos antepasados eran indígenas de América del Norte, así como de España, México, el Caribe y América Central y del Sur, y considerando que el propósito del mes de la cultura hispana es crear conciencia sobre las contribuciones de las personas de cultura hispana a la cultura estadounidense, muchas personas de herencia hispana se desempeñan como líderes de los derechos civiles y organizadores comunitarios, políticos, maestros, periodistas, socorristas, artistas, profesionales de salud, atletas, inventores, artistas y más. Y considerando que el mes de la cultura hispana está vinculado a la celebración de nuestra comunidad y refleja una variedad de culturas distintas, ahora, por lo tanto, el Consejo de Administración de Hayward Area Recreation and Park District proclama el 15 de septiembre al 15 de octubre como el mes de la cultura hispana e invita a la comunidad a aprender más sobre la cultura, la gente, las tradiciones y los valores hispanos que han enriquecido positivamente a nuestra comunidad.
And at this time, we would like to invite up Councilmember Francisco Zarmeño to accept the proclamation.
Yeah, no tequila.
So back in 1964, I was 12 years old. My mother brought me to the United States. I did not want to come. I thought it was a weird country. I read a lot of bad things about it. I only knew 1, 2, 3. And then 4 years later, President Johnson began this movement. And I go, okay, I changed my mind. And ever since 1968, it's been a pleasure to be a resident and citizen of the United States, because we have grown as a country, one that really welcomes all nations, all people from all over the world. And I think that's tremendous. Your proclamation comes from the heart, and it's accepted by this particular heart. And as you know, I'm wearing my Mexico, Viva Mexico, because we're celebrating today the independence of not only Mexico, but most of the Central American countries. And if you remember Reagan, he said, we have to fight all the Contras, because once a country falls to the communists, all of Latin America will fall to the communists. Well, it did happen with the Mexican independence movement, but it did not happen with the Contra and Nicaragua movement. So, and we have a lot of good folks. It's tremendous to be a citizen and a resident of what in 1923 was the most diverse city in the United States, which is Hayward, because we have heart, and I think it's tremendous. I applaud you. I like your new looks. I love the wood looks, because I used to work with wood. I still do. And I appreciate if there's anything I can do for you. It's very unusual being in front of you folks. I'm not used to this. I don't want to go beyond 3 minutes. That's very important. But I think that one of the things that people really don't like about the Hispanic culture is that it was brought to us by the Spaniards, and we still have a lot of Spaniard haters out there. So Spanish culture is fantastic, and that's Hispanic culture. And one of the things we don't have is a sister city from the country of Spain. So I'm going to be start looking into it. Yep, of course. Yes, we need to talk. I think that Spain is a tremendous paella, sangria. I'm hoping that the mariachi can start walking in right now. And who brought the tequila? Anybody bring the tequila? No one. And if you like, Mimi, go ahead. Show us your walking stick. Viva Mexico, señores. All right. So thank you very much. If there's anything I can do, you know where I am. I do everything but cut the grass. And I hear there may be a park with a new name. So that would be tremendous. If you'd like to invite me to that particular day, just let me know. I thank you. And where's? Oh,
All right, so we'll come out. We'll get a photo with you.
Viva Mexico!
On out and get a photo with you. What do you think?
This is a cue into the mariachi.
Yes.
All right, have you guys look at me. You ready? 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Thank you.
Can you send it to me?
I will.
Of course. Thank you very much. Thank you all again. All right.
Thank you, sir.
Viva Heart! Viva! Muy bien. Time for dinner.
Thank you, Francis.
Celebrate.
No, there's, see?
Oh, okay.
Yes. All right. So now we're on to public comments, and this is for matters not otherwise listed on the agenda. The Board of Directors welcomes your comments under this section, but is prohibited by state law from discussing items not listed on the agenda. Your item will be taken under consideration and referred to the Board of Directors, committees, and/or staff to provide an opportunity for all members of the public who wish to address the board a time allocation of 3 minutes for each individual speaker, and a 30-minute total time for public testimony on an item has been established by the Board of Directors. I have one comment card for something that is not on the agenda, and this would be Ms. Gonzalez. And Ms. Gonzalez, we do have your comment. We received this today.
Oh, I was going to read that, but so. I
You
think
can.
it's important.
Bring the mic down.
Behavior plunge.
What? Bring the mic down. There you go.
The Hayward plunge wastes a considerable amount of water in the showers. Water is left running unattended by users despite of signs emphasizing the need to save water. Many patrons take unreasonable long showers. I am proposing to the board that the board install metered showers valves in the seat showers in the downstairs plunge bathrooms. The cost of a valve can be as low as $138. $138. I also want to express concern about how a dispute at the plunge was handled by the plunge manager named Tommy. On Wednesday, August 21 at around 11 a.m., I was in the women's locker room and I saw that a shower had been left turned on. I turned it off to save water as I was encouraged to do by signs installed by plunge employees. When the woman who has left the shower unattended returned, she got mad and started yelling profanities at me. Hearing the dispute, the plunge manager, Tommy, came downstairs, entered the bathroom, and spoke with the woman who was yelling at me. She finally went to take a shower. Tommy never asked me for my version of the incident, and although I was leaving and the incident seems to be concluded, he called a park ranger to escort me. No, the other patron who was taking a shower out of the plunge. And I was expelled. Tommy proceeded to yell about the dispute with all the plunge staff and many friends who also swing at the plunge to complete my humiliation. It was an overreaction to the situation and unfair and disrespectful to me as long-time well-known patron of the plunge. When I complained about the incident to the hard supervisors, I received an inadequate response that included inaccurate information. First, Tommy apparently told the hard supervisor that he never entered the women's restroom. That is false. He entered while I was getting dressed and talked to the other patron. Second, Tommy told his hard supervisor that both patrons were removed from the plunge. This is also false. I was expelled while the other woman involved was taking a shower. I understand that it may have been a difficult situation for all involved, but I'm very disappointed that someone who has been such a long time and well-known patron of the plunge has received so little consideration and support from the management. That's it. Is someone have any question?
Thank you. We can't comment on this, but we will review it with staff and thank you for your comments. We have a second one. Tyler?
Hi, good evening. I think I brought it up before, but just kind of a reminder, at the Cherryland Dog Park, there were two fences that were down for a bit thanks to a fallen tree. One was repaired. There's still one that's on the property line that still has that temporary metal fence that is there. It's probably not longer than an 8-foot section of fence, but just a reminder that it's been like that going on for a couple years now. I think it was maybe in the winter of 2021 or 2022 that this wooden fence was down and the temporary fence was put up kind of diagonal. So thanks. It would be great if that was put on a priority list somewhere because it's been a couple years now. Thanks.
Thank you, Tyler. All right. Any other public comments for items not on the agenda? Okay, I'm going to close the public comments and move forward with the consent calendar. Are there any items that members of the board would like to pull from the consent calendar for further discussion? I have one 8.6 if there's nothing else by anyone else. Okay. Could I get a motion on the rest of the consent calendar?
Mr. President, also move 8.1 through 8.5 and then 8.7.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Please vote. Yes. Okay, thank you for voting unanimously. So I had more of a comment about 8.6 than a question. I just wanted to say thanks for moving forward with Valley View, because we recently at the Fall Festival in Castro Valley met with a lot of community members, and that was a common theme from a lot of people were asking, when is it moving forward? And I was reassuring them that it's moving forward and that project's happening, and now we have some tangible things to encourage further community involvement, and thank you. With that being said, do I have a motion to move 8.6 forward? All right,
I'll second that.
please vote. All right. Another unanimous vote. Thanks, guys. On to public hearings. 10.1, public hearing number 5, hard transition from at-large to by-district elections.
All right, great. Hopefully this works well. Thank you for having me here. My name is Paul Mitchell. I'm the owner of Redistricting Partners. I was here last time at our first draft maps hearing, where we diligently went through 41 maps in an attempt to try to cull down a lot of public submissions. And just to get a sense, you know, with a lot of special districts, we'll get 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 maps. You know, getting 40 maps just to kind of at the starting point is pretty astounding. And I think there was a lot of good work done going through those maps. If folks after this hearing really want to dive into how we got to the 5 maps that are here, the last 2 meetings are really instructive. They're a lot of discussion about the communities of interest, a lot of discussion about the criteria. And I think that they're very insightful for folks who want to dig in some more. But tonight we're going to go through where we're at in the process. When we first talked about the process, we talked about a 5 hearing structure that's required in the law, where the first 2 hearings are just talking about the process involving the public, trying to seek input about communities of interest and mapping criteria. The 3rd hearing, which I was at, was the initial map hearing. The 4th hearing was the second mapping hearing, and it was an opportunity to cull the list to 1 or a few plans. And this hearing is the hearing to adopt one of these plans. And so I'm going to, sorry, this is on a, I just want to make sure there's not a little lag there on the Zoom. So I'm going to cover, once again, the traditional principles of redistricting and districting process. I'm going to go through the draft maps and then overview what we've done in terms of a hearing schedule. And then the next steps, there's one final next step, and that is to vote on a final map that you'll adopt for the 2026-2028 election cycles. So first off, we always like to talk about it. And I know the board members and staff have heard this so many times. I think this is our 11th hearing or something. So we talk about districts and districting process about balancing. It's about creating districts that are relatively equal sized in terms of population, total population, based on the most recent census. Districts that are contiguous, meaning that they're whole parts. Maintaining communities of interest, which can mean a lot of things. Communities of interest can be a high income area or low income area. It could be a community that has a certain need, like a certain access to recreation or a park, or a certain religious group or ethnic group. There's a lot of things that can be these communities of interest. And one of the discussions we've had here is, what is a community of interest? How much is the community of interest of I live in Hayward versus the community of interest of I'm part of this cultural history in the city. Easily identifiable and understandable lines. And to create lines that are easily understood, we want to try to follow things like city boundaries, major roads. when we look at these maps here, some people might look at it and say, well, I can't understand this map because I can't exactly figure out where my house is. We have a map version for all these plans online where you can type in an address and it'll zoom in right to that district. So there's a web-based interaction of this too. These maps for overview, a lot of them, people look at them and say, oh, I recognize these boundaries. These make sense to me. That's what we're looking for. And keeping districts compact. Compactness in redistricting does not mean small. Compactness in redistricting means, it's a very specific California definition, that you're not bypassing nearby population to get to faraway population. So if we're drawing districts, we wouldn't take these 3 board members, bypass everybody here, come back to us and say, well, that's a compact district, because it's not. It's skipping all these people that are right nearby it in order to get to somebody that's further away. And so compactness in our world is to try to keep those population groups together. Different states have different criteria, but that's the California version of the criteria. So these are the maps that we're going to be talking about tonight. These are, in fact, the only maps that you have as eligible to potentially adopt as a final plan. The way the state law works, any map that's going to be discussed and voted on tonight has to have been public for 7 days. That was something the state had to do because you'd see some cities or some counties, you know, go through a process, the public felt engaged, at the last minute, the supervisor stands up and says, hey, my brother just drew this really cool map. Let's just adopt this map that nobody's seen. And then all of a sudden the map's passed and everybody leaves feeling as though their community input was not taken seriously. So in order to make sure that the community understands that their input was taken seriously, you're restricted to only maps that have been in the public space for at least 7 days. And all of these maps meet that criteria. For all these maps, I'm going to go through real briefly kind of what it looks like, talk about the data around it, and then we have on the website individual district zoom in pages, and like I said, the web-based map and all of that. So draft B is from the original ABC draft maps that we created for the first hearing. The things that jump out here that we'll talk about for all the maps is that first off, it has a deviation of 7.2%. That doesn't mean 7.2% deviance. It means that that the difference from the largest district in terms of population to the smallest district in terms of population is only 7.2%. So that could mean the smallest district is 3% under and the largest district is 4.2% over, but that range is 7.2%, and we're restricted to no more than 10%. This is not a smaller is necessarily better type of criteria. This is is it under 10% or is it over 10%? It's more of a binary. The map attempts to keep together what data nerds call census designated places, but what you call towns, communities, you know, the boundaries of the communities here, whether or not they're incorporated city or not. And then the other things that we looked at were the Hayward's neighborhood boundaries and maintaining the communities of Ashland, Cherryland, and San Lorenzo in one district. And you'll see that in a number of these maps. You can see that trying to keep those communities together. This is what the map looks like in terms of an overview. You'll see the hillside area. There are 2 districts. And then on the western side, you have the other 3. You can see just if somebody was to walk in here and never understood the community, this does look like 5 districts. They are physically compact. They don't look like those redistricting maps you see like in North Carolina where it looks like 2 octopuses hugging. You know, it's not like weird shapes. These are shapes that make kind of sense. And when you look in, like if you look at the line between the Castro Valley district, that brownish gray one, and the one to the south there, District 4, you'll see these squiggly lines. And somebody might say, well, those squiggly lines, what do those mean? A lot of times that ends up being like a city boundary. And so we're trying to key off of things like that. When you see those squiggly lines, you can ask the question, what is that? And generally we can go in there and find that. When I talked about the deviation, that smallest district versus largest district, that 3.4 over, 3.8 under, that's 7.2%. This first data table up here is from the 2020 census. That is a point in time count. That's the total population. The data table below is the citizen voting age population from another census product, but that one asks people about citizenship. And it helps us determine what is the ethnic breakdown of the eligible voters. And so I'll talk about this in other redistricting maps as well. The Asian citizen voting age population in this District 3, which is this map here, that's the red one. That district is 34.2% Asian citizen voting age population. That can be different Asian nationalities. And then the Latino citizen voting age population, that one is up here. It goes as from a high of 36 to a low of 13.7. You see 4 of those districts are over 20% Latino, and 3 of them are over 30% Latino. Whereas in the Asian citizen voting age population, only 1 is over that 30% Latino. When we look at B2, B2 means that it's an iteration of B. It has a smaller deviation, and it was edited to draft B to maintain Fairway Park, and I'm going to show where that is here. It maintains Hayward's boundaries. It's very similar to the other plan. If we look here, this is what B2 looks like. If you keep your eye down here on this bottom part of 4, that purple area there, you can see that in the prior plan in B, it had this kind of finger coming down here, and B2 eliminates that and puts that into this district number 4. And in order to balance it, see, we had to move this area in the brown, this 2 into 3. Whenever you take from one district, you have to make it equal in terms of population. So we would call this a swap. You're swapping population between 2 different districts. And then in order to make up for that swap, you have to do it somewhere else. So the deviation, 4.4%. This shows the census designated places. So you can see Hayward in red, and then you also see Fairview in gray. Remember I said the squiggly lines might be a boundary? You can see Hayward city boundary there is that squiggly line, and we'll see that again. You can see that San Lorenzo is split, because if you tried to put all 3 of these communities in together, the district would be too large. So there has to be some kind of compromise there. And these are neighborhood boundaries, and you'll see like this triangle, I think it's Jackson Triangle, is creating these 2 sides of this one district here. And we are, where we can, keeping different neighborhoods separated. In this one, this pinkish one, you're not able to, because of population, to get that perfectly balanced. Draft D, this map was drawn, I drew this map after that first set of hearing where we went through the 40+ maps. There was a lot of discussion about how Hayward's downtown area was drawn. And there was a discussion of a seahorse. And there was discussion of other elements of the maps that we saw in other versions. And so there was a request, maybe we could see something that would do this. And so prior to the 4th hearing, we did this, and Liz came and presented this map. And not only did it stay in the maps to be considered, it also has a second version coming up here. But 4.4% deviation created after that first mapping hearing on August 5th. Maintains census designated places, and like I said before, that Ashland, Cherryland, San Lorenzo, although it does in a different version. So this is what the map looks like. 4.4% deviation. Let's note that that Asian citizen voting age population on this map gets up over 37%. D2, again, is a revision of D. Both of them are options. It has a wider deviation, but it has, again, wider deviation doesn't mean that it's not as good. It keeps that Jackson Triangle I mentioned earlier together in this version, and it minimizes that split of Fairway Park, which is 2 things I've already talked about in prior maps. So this is D2, and if we look, you can see, well, I can't see it on this, but you can see the neighborhood boundaries, or the census designated place boundaries over here, and you can see the differences between the map that was D and the map that's D2. between the dark lines and these pink lines. Or the colored lines. Yeah, so the lines are D2 and the colors are D. Yeah, so it's a little bit of taking from here, taking from there, kind of trying to balance. This map also has a deviation or an Asian citizen voting age population that got moved up to 37.9%, so almost 38% Asian citizen voting age population. And this is with the census designated places, D2. So you can see how those lines look. Again, the lines are the district lines and the colors are the census designated places. And this is where you can see the neighborhoods. So you can see that iron triangle here in the middle in that gray. And it's a different division of Fairway Park. But again, it's very similar to D, slightly higher citizen voting age population for the Asian community. Now, draft E is based on public map 243474 that was submitted on the online mapping tool. When we look at this map, it has some characteristics that are similar to other plans, although this map, like map B2, it does have 3 districts here that are somewhat aligned, although they're a little different on the west side. And it has a relatively equal split of the districts on the hillsides. The deviation is 6.5%. One thing that the Asian citizen voting age population on this plan is only 33.6, so it's on the lower end of that. And that's because this District 4 was drawn in a different construction than in the other versions. This is the plan with the census designated places. So the lines are the plan and the colors are the census designated places. And this is the plan with the neighborhoods. Draft F is a 5.4% deviation. It's placed on another public plan. And also, again, we see this Cherryland, San Lorenzo, Ashland together. Now you can see this does a pretty different version of how to draw that District 4. And as a result of the way it's constructed, the Asian community is only 33% citizen voting age population in this version of the plan. The Asian community is in the southern portion of both 3 and 4. And so it's somewhat divided in this plan. That's why you have the lower total population of Asians in that district. And this is what it looks like with the census designated places and with the neighborhoods. Draft G, it's a total deviation of 6.8%. We can see that here. Now look at how on District 4, you can see that the relationship with Jackson Triangle is different than in other plans that we've seen. It puts it into this District 4 here. And again, you can see 3 and 4, this area is where we've seen a lot of the higher density of the Asian population in other maps. And so if we look at this, I'm going to expect to see a lower Asian citizen voting age population. So you see it at 32.3. And here it is with the census designated places. And with the neighborhoods. Now, one thing we haven't talked about to a large extent is the idea of sequencing. We're going to have 5 districts. We're going to have 2 districts coming up in 2026 and 3 districts coming up in 2028. When you convert from an at-large election system to a districted election system, it's not like we just eliminate all the prior elections and say, okay, we're starting from scratch, new board, let's just go. We have to implement it over the series of 2 election cycles because your terms are expiring over the course of 2 election cycles. And so the two board members whose terms are up in 2026, those seats will be up first. And then the latter three would be up in 2028. Now, you're going to be able to choose how you want to number these districts. We would suggest that in the 2026 election that the even numbered districts go first, and then the odd numbered districts go in 2028. Now, the catch is you could, is it the opposite of that? You have two up in 2026 and three in 2028. You could say, okay, we're going to do even numbered districts, non-numbered districts that way. But we've taken a look at our preferences, and we haven't drawn any of these maps considering where anybody lives, but you might want to think about who would be up in what election cycles. And that's not something that I can be a part of because I don't know. But you could say, hey, we want to take this district number 4 and we want to make that 3 and the red one 4, so that the one that is going to come up in 2026, this even numbered one, we want that to come up in 2028. So you can just play around with the numbers on this map, change the numbers on this map to match that so that the even numbered come up in 2026 and the odd numbered come up in 2028. So 1, 3, 5 and 28 and 2 and 4 and 26. That's a common way that districts are done in a lot of cities and special districts. Oh, sure. Sorry. And I do want to, before I finish here, this is our list of community hearings that we've had. So 9 meetings to discuss the districting process. That includes the 5 that were the required hearings plus additional community outreach. And the process that we've taken here in this room has been through the course of the last 2 hearings to review public submissions, review maps drawn by the demographer, narrow those maps down. We didn't narrow it down to 1 map, but we narrowed it down to 5. Then we're going to, from there, select a map, select sequencing, and vote on both the map and the sequencing tonight in order to move this process to where we go to the county registrar, give them the maps, give them the data, give them the sequencing, and it can be in place for the 2026 election cycle. One final note, when we do process these maps out of this room, we will likely ask that the resolution allows for non-substantive changes. And you might say, well, why does Paul want to make changes to the map? If the county registrar comes back and says, hey, you drew this line down the middle of the street, we want to draw the line at this median here. And you drew the line that went through this park, we want it to go street corner to street corner. And, you know, the way that they draw the line, like the parking lot has to be in this precinct and the park, all those little non-substantive changes are going to happen from the county registrar when we get done with this process. So we would, you know, want to be able to make non-substantive changes with your staff and the county registrar's office so they can align these things to the precincts. It's just a common part of the process. And so that's one thing. I don't know if there was something else I wanted to say, but if it comes up or if you have questions, I'm sure I'll get to it. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions, go back to any maps, do anything you'd like to do at this point.
Thank you. I'm going to entertain questions from the board before we go to public comments about this. So Director Hatcher.
Yeah, Paul, I just wanted to also get into public record, if you can just discuss for the public, what happens every 10 years, so we can at least get that noted.
Yeah. So if we were to adopt a map, the census would come every 10 years. So in 2030, they'll have a census. It will measure where everybody is April 1st, 2030. That census will come out in 2021. And then before the 2022 elections, you're going to have to go through a redistricting.
I'm sorry, 2030.
2032.
Yeah.
Before the 2032 election, before the 2032 elections, you'll have to do a redistricting. Now, when you do that redistricting, you're going to have to follow all these same criteria. And the law doesn't say start with your existing map and just make adjustments, which used to be the mode in the decades past. The law says consider communities of interest, consider, the city boundaries or whatever, compactness and contiguity and all this stuff. So you do go through a process that involves the public, has to have 5 hearings, has to go through a lot of the same process we just did.
Thank you, because I just want the public to know that it is a living document, but every 10 years.
Yeah.
Basically. Got it. Thank you. And one more, Mr. President. In past, I've agreed with the hearing the public comment after the board comments, but tonight I'd like to hear public comment first. And if there's any objection, just so we can kind of finalize comments from the public, then we make a decision, just a suggestion.
Okay, well, I have one, if that's okay with the rest of the board, I'm fine with that. We have one comment card from Mr. Rafferty. At the moment, we only have one comment card.
I just want to second a couple of things that Paul
Yes,
said.
and I'm gonna open the public comment portion of this. So here, public hearing, yes.
I'm primarily going to second a couple of things that Paul said. First of all, the map D2 and its current.
I'm sorry, can you get closer to the microphone?
Oh,
We need
thank
to.
you. So map D2 and its current,
Thanks, Gary.
so, first of all, map 38 versus 32 or 33 may not sound like a big difference, but it's important to consider how elections are run. Now, you're not in a ranked choice voting. I'm a big fan because sometimes minorities split their votes. That's not on your menu. So we're talking about a first past the post world. And if you look at elections general, let's just, for purposes of discussion, say there may be 3 candidates and that you probably need about 40% to win. Now, the difference between 38, that's you need 2% crossover voters, whereas 32, you need 8% crossover voters. So you really have to kind of turn this upside down to realize how significant that difference is. The second thing I want to reemphasize is 2 points Paul made about sequencing and redistricting. There's something, again, generally the rule of thumb is that minorities don't vote very well in off gubernatorial elections. So, and the legislature has very strong feelings about this. The same time they did the safe harbor, they said, we never want to see what Anaheim did, where they put the minority district in the gubernatorial election. And that's supposedly a violation independently of the law. So, when the school district said, we're going to run the Asian district on 2026, I was concerned and I did the analysis and I found, to my astonishment, and frankly, I think it surprised their demographer too, there was no difference. It's an anomaly, but the Asian community doesn't vote as much as white people, but it's consistent across that. And so there was no objection to having it in 2026. Sooner the better. And there is a benefit to your coinciding with that, as MAP-D does, and running that district in the gubernatorial cycle, because maybe they can organize a slate where they're running, because they're a relatively similar district. So that's a benefit. I also want to emphasize that, I think Paul sort of said this, once you do that, once you give special consideration, which turns out not to be hard to do in this case, and MAP-D also, the 2 Latino districts are both in the presidential cycle, which is probably the right answer. I haven't done the detailed analysis. You're entitled to consider your preferences. Now, you can't consider them at all when you draw the map. When you do the sequence, you can think about that. And you all know where each other live. I confess I did once too. I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about it. I kind of put it out of my mind. He doesn't know it all. But you have that flexibility. So, and my view is that unlike the map, I don't think that sequence necessarily has to be posted 7 days in advance. I wouldn't object to it. If you change that around to suit your convenience, once you've done the special consideration, which at least in MAP-D, I think is good. So I do want to make one final point, if I can. I can, and that is, you can change the map 10 years from now. But you can't change the sequence very easily. You can't just swap things over and say, this district we're not changing the map, but we're gonna defer everybody in the district and they won't vote for 6 years. And this other district's gonna vote 2 years. That's kind of a more difficult change. So pay attention to the sequencing, but you do have a lot of flexibility in your particular case.
All right, thank you, sir. We have one more comment card from Mr. Robinson. I haven't gotten his card yet.
Hi, I'd like to talk a little bit about, so I'm very supportive of this idea of grouping the unincorporated flatland areas together into a district. Unfortunately, it's a little bit too big, and I'd like to think about how we're going to take a small bite out of this area. So there are several different options available to you. The one thing I'd like to ask you to keep in mind is that there is a significant geographic barrier between Hayward and San Lorenzo when you're west of Hesperian. There's the airport there's the dead golf course, there's a big wetland, and then on the very far edge of the bay, there's the Bay Trail. And so the only way to get from the west side of San Lorenzo to Hayward is on the Bay Trail, which is a long bike ride. So I think that's a great natural barrier to take into account. There is only one map that really makes good advantage of that, which is map G, which is derived from one that I drew. There is another one that's kind of close, but it also cuts off Hayward Acres. And I know that it's been expressed in the past that we want to keep Hayward Acres, which is part of San Lorenzo, together with San Lorenzo. So then the other important geographic barrier is Walpert Ridge, which separates Palomares Canyon from the Hayward Hills. There's no way to get from Palomares Canyon to any part of the Hayward Hills or to Mission without going out of most of these districts. Even if you have to go actually off of 580 north into Casper Valley to go up and around up Five Canyons or onto Redwood Road. So I urge you to consider respecting that natural boundary, which I think is really important. It exists in map G, and so I advocate that map. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And one more card from Miss Mimi Dean.
Hello. So I think the whole point of this process was to give different groups a voice. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So which map is it that gives, for instance, Asians a voice? Which one was that? D2, okay. And how about Latinos? There are a few. Okay. And okay. I just have kind of a questions about, like, one thing I want to know, does this mean anything for HASPA? It doesn't, right? This means nothing, right? Okay. Which map is going to have the most unincorporated representation? It looked to me like it was map E. I just, the way they're drawn, it just looks like, and these are all out of order, so it's really hard for me to know which one is which. I think it's map B.
Well,
And I'm just wondering about the population of the unincorporated area versus the population of the Hayward area that's covered by this. So that was a concern for me.
Ms. Dean, a key thing that of the districts that comes out of this is there will be 2 representatives from Hayward proper, half our district approximately, and then 3 from the unincorporated area.
Okay.
Or 2.5, probably. It's probably 2.5 and 2.5 is what we're looking at. Yeah.
Okay.
The population is 52% Hayward, 48% unincorporated.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay, and some of these maps keep the Eden area together and some of them don't, and could anybody make a strong point for why we would want to do that or not do that? Keep Eden together? I always like the idea of more representation. You know, I always think it's better to have 2 people representing you, although I think you guys all work for the whole district. That's kind of how I've always viewed this board. So.
So-
Okay,
Well, I mean, if I could respond, I guess I can. It's very difficult to tie. Oh,
it's
sorry.
36 seconds.
Pause it so I can speak and I'll get you more time. But my understanding is when we do the math and when you look through Ashland, Cherryland, Hayward Acres and San Lorenzo, that is well over 62,000 people. So it has to be partially divided and it's so how do you do that? Because we have it's got to stay within a certain percentage of a population. That's not really flexible.
Okay, so 2 representatives then, so they'll be in 2 different districts.
So
That's-
the
that's-
deviation between the highest populated district and the lowest cannot be more than 10%.
Right, right,
So that's how you get evenly sized districts.
all right.
Right.
Right. So are there any other reasons that map D, the Jackson Triangle one, is the best map? Because that seems to be the one that gives representation to
Mimi,
an.
this, unfortunately, this isn't really a conversation. It's your
Okay.
chance for public comment. And then if the board does their job right, they'll represent and answer you when they get their turn to speak.
Got it.
So your feedback is what we're looking for.
Yeah, well, yeah, and you don't have to answer now, so you could answer during your time.
Okay.
But I just want to know why map D is the best map, and because it looks like it is the best one. Thank you.
Thank you. And Tyler Dragoni.
Hi, board members. Yeah, I am a little, I mean, I've been part of the process a little bit. I put it in a sample map and whatnot. I appreciate the consultant sharing that they drew. Draft map D2. I'm in favor of draft map D2. I think the imprint of it looks like the Eden area general plan. And if we know anything about the unincorporated Eden area, planning considerations, or you could say the planning hurdles in that area are various, but there's essentially those same hurdles throughout that community of interest. So I do like how map D adheres to the city boundaries as faithfully as possible. And so I would like to support map D2 for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. And are there any more members of the public that would like to comment on this before I close the public portion? Okay, I'm closing the public portion and I'll bring it back to the board now. Thank you. Let's go down the line. Okay. Director Andrade, do you have any comments or feelings about this?
I have no comment except to say that the requirement was, I think, 5 meetings and we did 11 meetings. And the requirement also was we had to do within 90 days and we've done it within 90 days. And we have lots of public comment and it seems that we've met that criteria. And now it's just, what's the best map? Well, seems to me D2 is the one that seems to, that's the one I like the best. So that's all my comment's gonna be.
Okay.
Thank you.
Director Hodges.
Paul, you said something about every election cycle, there's going to be some tweaking. Is it going to take anywhere close to what we're doing now?
Oh, every 10 years. Yeah, every
Oh,
redistricting
just
cycle.
on, I
Every 10 years,
misunderstood.
so
I thought
yeah.
You said every.
I wish it was every election. I'm kidding. No, every 10 years, every city, school board, the state, they all have to adjust based on the census because of that equal population requirement. Now, if all your districts don't change or they're still equal population within that 10%, you still have to go through this process just to make sure, get public input and all of that kind of stuff.
Okay, so you never said anything like little tweaking?
Well, so there was another part of the conversation. I said that when we transmit this to the county registrar, we're transmitting a plan that's based on the census boundaries. And the county registrar might use parcels, they might use another demarcation. So when we have a census blocks generally go on the front lawns of people's houses. It's like whatever side the mailbox is on is the actual, the residence. And so the county registrar might say, hey, that's a great map. We're gonna move all these boundaries to the middle of the street or to the alley behind the houses, because those houses, however it's gonna work, we do like slight adjustments so that they can align them to precincts. That's it. And it moves 0 people. We never move any people.
Thank you. Okay, Director Lamden.
Sure. So I'll start with the appreciation for this process. This was part of our strategic plan to do. If we had the choice, I think we might have stretched it out some, but for the amount of the restrictions that we had to do this process, I really want to applaud our district staff for the right over there. Yeah. The Go Thomas. The amount of inclusion, the amount of thoughtfulness, the amount of responsiveness to community requests was really high. And I really deeply appreciate that. Yeah, 40 maps. No joke.
More than 40.
Yeah. And to the community who engaged in this process, wrote draft maps, provided comment, made sure that we understood that what was important for these maps was that our communities of interest were protected, our census designated places were protected, that our community wanted to hang together to the extent possible. That really came through, and I heard from my colleagues that was where we go with this. I have a request when we get ready for a motion. I'm fine with the suggestion for the no substantive changes piece. I also want to bring back something we said early, which was that the intent is still for this board to represent all of the district, regardless of where the lines are, and to put that in paper. And lastly, to the point that was made earlier by Mr. Rafferty, that we adopt the lines and then we talk about our sequencing pieces, because I really don't want there to be any question. This board has done a very good job of keeping our own personal interests out of the map drawing, and I want to keep that delineation. So I do have thoughts about sequencing, but I'll save those until we finish with the map part. And so with that, I also support map D too. I'm not thrilled with the dividing of Fairway Park or sorry, one other neighborhood that Southgate. But I also tried to tweak that, and I know that that Redistricting Partners, who's been fantastic in this process, and our district staff have really tried to see if it was possible to protect those 2 neighborhoods and also meet all of the other criteria, and it's just not possible. So in that way, then and given the public comment in support of D2, I would support that as well.
Thank you, Director Lamden. Director Hatcher.
Thank you. Yeah, that's good information to have, that we were, on this process still prior to being notified. And I think that, the mindfulness of this community has always been the forefront of this entire board, since I've been on here for 10 years. And we had some advocates talking about keeping it at large, which of course couldn't happen. But I think it also showed some consideration of what, this board is looked at as endearing this entire district. I will continue to uphold that, and I appreciate those thoughts about that. I'm just going to briefly just mention a couple of the 4 other maps before my map that I'm choosing here, because very difficult process, because we are just, really, dividing, but also bringing together. I think a point that Ms. Dean brought up about, representing all cultures in this and for getting more voting, it's specifically to the API community. And so I think a lot of my considerations were around those numbers as we're talked about during the presentation. The B2 map was a bit, it had the San Lorenzo community with the Jackson Triangle, which I just thought was kind of the odder piece of that. Some other pieces were relatively considerate with some of the other pieces, but again, it had a relatively low API. The DE map, I think it had the best lines, and when we were talking about, how they looked, the two octopuses, hugging each other was a good example, because some of our early considerations really looked odd, and so that can obviously lead to the community thinking, we're cherry picking different areas to be specifically looked at. The D4 map, it had the interesting part was San Lorenzo, a part of more of the south, off Depot Road and Greenwood Park area, where our Greenwood Park is. So it had a lot of similar communities, but it had a low API also. And the last map that I was looked at, the DG map, had solid lines on there. I really appreciated how it was drawn, the Ashland, Cherryland, San Lorenzo community still together, the hills of the Hayward and Castro Valley kind of being represented together. But again, not quite, up on the API numbers. And, when I looked at, the Jackson Triangle D2 map, it minimized the split of Fairway Park. Didn't eliminate it, of course. It was the highest in the API number at 37%. I initially gravitated towards it because of also the downtown core area of Hayward. It kind of, some of the maps didn't represent that. So you see the District 1 there kind of having a core area. I think the lines are clean, and I am in support of the D2 Jackson Triangle map.
Thank you, Director Hatcher. So I want to echo a lot of the comments that have been made already. I want to just say, we may not be the most glamorous board, but we do take the time of doing this as much as possible and putting our passion, and we care about the community, and we went above and beyond. We did far more than what the minimums were, and we listened. And I'm very proud of our board. I'm very proud of our staff. I'm very proud of the time that was taken for all this. I personally had a couple issues with pretty much each of these maps. And it's a kind of impossible to get everything perfect. But one of the things I do like about this D2 map is it does preserve most of our community neighborhoods as well as we can. I was particularly concerned as well about Southgate and the Jackson and Fairway Park, but there's only so much we can do. I do have a question that was just raised about Walport Ridge. Is that now, can we zoom in on that? Because access, if while it is technically in one district, if the only access is through another district, doesn't that cause a problem, is what I'm getting at? Because I think the access road, I think if the only way to get in there is through Palomares, right? Is that correct? And so Walport Ridge has to stay in District 4 then. It's not am I wrong on this, or am I?
So I'll address, it's an issue of contiguity. Now, some states do require travel contiguity, but California doesn't require travel contiguity. California requires that the population stays nearby. So there are some jurisdictions around the country where if you can't drive from one to another, it means that it's not really contiguous. But in California, we're looking more at the population clusters. So it's not a technical, it doesn't technically violate anything in the law, travel contiguity.
But by intent, I mean, I guess
that would be ideal.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was getting at, is if the only way to get in there
might
is
be
to drive through another district, that may be a point of concern. And I think that it's not a high population base, so if it could possibly. Okay.
Oh. We can definitely look at it for you. Maybe I'm trying to think about before we leave tonight, maybe we just look at this. Maybe what you could do is make your motion on the adopting the plan, have your discussion about, I don't know how you would do it with your rules, but necessarily like have your discussion about sequencing, and I can go look at the map and the little tweak you're talking about, and we can see whether or not that would be a non-substantive change.
Okay.
So I can look at that and tell
'Cause
you what the.
It's not a high population, it's a very low population density, but it might actually help the neighborhood. So it was something to be concerned, but I just wanted to
I'll just look. at
consider it.
Yeah, I can. look at
Okay. And with that being said, is there a motion from the board?
Do that. So I'll defer to the better minds in the room than mine, but I'll start a motion and somebody can help me if I'm mistaken in this. I'd like to make a motion to accept map D2, acknowledging that there may be non-substantive changes. And we may stop for a second. Do we want to pause this conversation and go to the sequencing and get the answer, or?
I would
Yeah.
prefer you give Paul a minute to look at that last change that you're requesting and
Okay.
then make your motion based upon whether or not that can happen. If you want to, in the meantime, because it's only the, southeast corner of what's labeled, I think, on D2 as District 4. Is that that's what you're talking about, right? I think that he can go look at that, and I don't think it's gonna change the districting, so you can start thinking about sequencing and maybe have that discussion, and he can come back with, I can solve it, or I can't solve it, and
Okay, so if we could pause that and then move on to sequencing then, is that what I'm hearing? Okay,
that would be my preference.
and Director Lamnin, you had some sequencing questions or suggestions.
Well, I guess so this is the point at which we very carefully, as was said, made sure that where the five of us live is not part of the discussion. But at this point, I feel like it needs to be, because if we're talking about who's up, I mean, the two seats that are up, it may be the case that they're in the same district. And so as we're looking at that those two people are living in the same district. So then as we're looking at what districts are not represented, how do we make sure we get representatives? How do we time it so that we get representatives in there? Does that make sense? Less about how it impacts us and more about how do we make sure that the community has representation that they need.
Do you have a suggestion or should I make one?
I'm not 100% sure where everybody lives, so I can't make a suggestion.
I was just gonna ask if you swap 4 and 1. I think that solves all our issues.
Well, all I would,
Go ahead.
if I could say, as imperfect as it is, whichever way you go, all districts will be represented because they'll still have at-large representation, which has, well, in other words, until it's fully implemented and it's all, at district, the at-large people will still be, representing everybody. And so as imperfect as that is, that would still go forward. And I think when the law was passed, that it was envisioned that it would be some sort of sequence. So however you want to do it, I don't think it's going to be totally unfair, even if it's not perfect, and people will be represented. That's all I want to say.
Actually, now that I'm looking at it, I don't think 4 and 1 split will take care of all of it. No, it won't. Sorry, that solves my issue. Yeah, sorry, Rick. Yeah, I mean, we can. Yeah,
Sorry.
but
Yeah.
2 of us live in 4, 1 lives in 3, and 2 live in 5, right? Is that correct? Well, for sequencing it is. Actually, one's in 1, one's in 5, one's in 3, and 2 are in 4. Is that correct?
I don't know. That's what I'm asking.
I'm in 3, R3,
I'm in 1.
S1.
You're in 5, right?
Alls.
Yeah.
P5.
Yes. And then Lou and I are both in 4, and my concern would be if we can somehow do it so that the 3 of us that are up for reelection this year don't have or the 2 that are up in 2 years don't have a 6-year gap, I guess is the deal. If we would have to have a short-term election or something, I mean, there's a way of doing this. I just don't know how to do it. I thought I had an easy fix.
1 and 5, what are? So we currently have, yeah.
I know you're kind of looking out there for maybe some help and you're going through your thing, but I think Paul's distracted right now, so.
That's okay.
Can let him finish what he's doing. We can ask people not to talk to him while.
We can, if there's a question, I can pay attention, but I also will at some point want some help trying to figure out which area.
Sure.
What was the question?
If we were to change the sequencing.
Yeah.
Right now we have 2 of us that are in 4, 1 is in 3, 1 is in 1, and 1 is in 5. And 2 of, well, go ahead.
Start with the people 1 and 1. So the people in 1 and 5, when are their terms up?
Next year.
Both of them?
Yes.
Yes,
Or make those 2 and 4?
there you go. Does that solve the whole problem?
And then 2 and 4 can be 1 and 5.
Okay, there you go.
Or however you want to do that part. But you're gonna then have those 3 districts are gonna be up in 2028, 2 and 4 are gonna be up in 2026.
There you go. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we paid consultants to do their. make the
It could quickly do that.
So 1 and 5 would become 2 and 4?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the Hayward diesel.
Yeah.
Yes, there's another section.
Yeah, so the presidential election, the Asian API community would have a better shot at bringing
Yeah,
somebody
there's
up at
not-
an open presidential election.
Special consideration is the term that was used by Mr. Rafferty, and that means that you give special consideration to any public input you had about this process. Doesn't mean that it's overriding. It means that it's special consideration. You should consider it. And what was verbalized by the attorney was that in some jurisdictions, like if we were in Oakland and there was a Latino district and we know Latinos are lower turnout and in a gubernatorial election cycle, their voting power is even more diluted. You wouldn't want to put that district they would advocate for being in a presidential election cycle. In this one, as he mentioned, when they did the city redistricting, they didn't find a strong preference either way, no real data to support one or the other. The only thing is that the API community district wouldn't be coming up immediately. It'd be coming up in 2028. It'd be staggered out.
Which is good.
It's you can see looking at, I don't know what the term is, but it's that little squint of an eye and twist of a lip. Okay. Acquiescence, I think, is what.
Is there any need to prioritize having the district that currently doesn't have a board member sitting in it to go sooner rather than later?
No, because it does have a board member sitting in it. They are still on the board.
At large.
They're elected at
Okay.
large. Yeah. They got that. They understood that. Yeah, the Asian district won't be coming up until 2028. Yeah. Not ideal, but also there wasn't a strong,
So would the alternative then be that we would have to do 3 districts next year because the
you can't
2,
do that.
because,
Right.
right,
You only have
because
2 seats.
neither of the 2 seats that would be up are that district.
Right. So that was our
So-
concern is,
And in most jurisdictions, they'd be asking for that district to come up in the presidential election cycle. In this one, they're neutral. So.
It is coming up in presidential.
Yeah, I mean,
Would you want to give input on the map here if I bring up the mapping tool?
yes,
As a-
please.
As a point of order, it would be great to have you go through that map boundary that we were had in question now. Try to figure out what the map is and then go back to sequencing and vote in the
Sure.
order that we had talked about earlier, please.
So the mapping software that we use is a kind of older software. It's the standard of the art. It's the best that they have, but we struggle with it. It's not a pretty software, so I'm going to warn you that this map doesn't look as pretty as the maps that you've seen so far. This is the mapping software, and we're talking about District 4. And which portion of District 4 are we talking about?
That Wallport Ridge, it's on the southern
Down.
portion, right about where your hand is. Yeah,
And you want to move something into District 4?
yes. there's a portion of Hayward that is not accessible from Hayward by a road.
Oh,
Does that make, does that solve, am I simplifying in a way that makes sense? Yes.
so let me shade the census places here real quick so we can get a. Um,
Mind different publication because I think people might be on Zoom or recording, just to make sure to use the microphones a little bit better, closer. Thank you so much, appreciate it.
so I'm just trying to make this look somewhat legible for everybody to see. Yes. Okay, so this area here, are you talking about this little area right
Yes.
here?
Yes,
Okay, this might not have any population in it.
that's,
It might be not even an issue.
yes, but if we make it part of it, it would mean that at least it's,
There's no population there. Can you keep it? Because it doesn't move anything?
So are you talking about this stair step part here?
yes.
It follows that boundary.
Right, but the only way to get in there, so if you zoom back down, that where your hand is right
Yeah,
now,
I see what you're saying.
the only way to get in there is through District 4. But I guess it
Yeah,
doesn't
but
matter
you would
because
have
of
to take all
no
of it.
population doesn't
If I
matter.
might have input here, you're a park and recreation body. You're not, so I could understand why I wouldn't want the only road into my voting district going through your district if we had a contentious county supervisor board or a city council, and I don't want to support you, so you're gonna do something where your road won't go through here, I'll get you. That road going through another district to a separate district, whereas it's not ideal, as I understand from what we heard tonight, it's legal in California, and I'm not sure it has a lot of impact on what we're doing.
You're correct. I think at this point, if there's no population there, it doesn't really matter anymore.
25 people.
Oh,
See, well, probably easier to go there through Pleasanton.
but actually, I mean, that's not gonna negatively, if that were to be folded into District 4, at least those people could, do you see what I'm saying, or does it matter? I mean, I know it's 25 people, but it shouldn't impact it won't be a substantive change from the districting point, but from the people that live there, they can get access. Oh,
No, that's 230.
yeah. Okay.
So I mean, this is something that is probably it is a very small change. It would be 25 people if you wanted to move it. I think what Mr. Rafferty has said is that he wouldn't object to something like this, but you'd probably have to put this on a consent calendar for the next hearing to actually do the adoption. It would probably move that, and you'd have to work that out with the attorney.
Okay, then I'm not gonna worry about it. Never mind.
But it's also something you can fix in your next redistricting in
Right.
6 years.
I just wanted to bring it up because it was brought up, which I thank. Thank you for, Mr. Robinson. Okay,
Do we have a motion? Okay, if it's a complete motion, I'd like to second that motion.
Okay, can I make a motion, the motion then?
I thought it was you that was.
That's okay.
I thought it was yours that was already on the floor.
I almost, I didn't quite finish it. So I will make a motion that we adopt map D2 as submitted, that our intent is for all of the board to represent all of Hard, regardless of where the district lines are, and that we are adapting this map, acknowledging that there may be non-substantive changes per the Alameda County.
I'll second that motion.
And discussion, is there any discussion? Would the sequencing be a separate motion? Is that what we would handle? Okay. So be that as it may then, we have a motion and a second. Can please vote? It will be. Did you get it up, Rick? Probably. I'm torn. All right. So motion passes. Now we're on to a discussion about sequencing.
Well, I guess I have a question. Yeah, but I'm letting him talk to the translator.
We have a question for you.
Sorry, I would think it was helping the translators understand the terminology and how to use it.
Absolutely. This is important too.
We heard pulpo earlier, which was fun. The pulpo districts.
So as I understand it, we don't really have a choice in terms of which ones go, because we would really need to do the two, in this case, because the two that are up live in two different districts. Those have to be the districts that come up next?
No.
Okay.
The thing that you're restricted by is you're gonna choose 2 seats that are gonna be in 26, 3 seats that are gonna be done in 2028. Now, as you consider, now that the maps are done and you're considering just what is common sense, what's the most cleanest way to do this? You can give special consideration to any input you've received from the community. You've received one bit of input from one member in the community. And you can consider when your elections are up, and you have 2 board members who are up in 2026. And those 2 members conveniently live in districts right now that they'd be the only incumbents in those districts. So if those were the even numbered districts, then all the other 3 would be odd. Now, if you wanted to move that around, you absolutely could. You could keep the numbering as just as it is on the map right now. The city of San Mateo, flipped a coin. So you can do all kinds of things to determine how to do it. It's just that we have a proposed sequencing that is required in the law, but you can change that sequencing at your will at this hearing.
And so just to clarify, if we were to pick a sequence that didn't include the districts that would be currently up, then the people that sit in those districts would just term out?
Yeah, so let's say the downtown Hayward district, where there's an incumbent lives there whose term expires in 2026, and you decided to make that expire in 2028. That was the election that's going to be in 2028. Well, in 2026, the person who lives there, they could either move and run for a different district that's up in 2026, or they could just wait until 2028 and then run for it again in 2028 when that area is up for election. And the opposite's true. Let's say somebody lives in an area and it just got made 2026 election date. They're on their election until 2028. They're not up until 2028. They could either run in 2026 and then resign their seat when they win. Now they're taking the new term, or they could stay in that seat. Somebody gets elected in their area for 2026, and now you have one person representing the at-large district and one person representing the new district there. And when 2028 comes, there's nothing for that person to run for unless they want to move to another district. Does that make sense?
So do we have more discussion points on this? Can I enter? Go ahead, Mr. Hatcher.
I just wanted, what is the consultant's proposed?
We, for convenience, just to make it clear, we just suggested evens are 2026, odds are 2028, and then we left it to you. We purposefully do this in all of our redistrictings. We do not go in and look at what would be the right thing to do and where incumbents live and any of the things that you'll be able to consider here tonight. So we just do what the law requires, give you a proposed sequencing with no thought. So that's our only, at that point, it's up to you. And I would suggest you do whatever.
I believe it's up to you. Based
So
upon the information you have and your understanding of the system as explained to us by Paul, I think it's up to you to decide. I thought there was a pretty simple solution presented in the beginning, but maybe that's not what you want.
So to reiterate, the suggestion was made is that the two seats that are up in 2026 become even. Is what I'm hearing. Yes.
The question that was raised to me, so it was less of a suggestion than a question that was raised to me, was that what would we do if 1 in 5 have people who are up in 2026? And if you wanted one in those two districts, the downtown district and the area east of it, to be up in the same 2026 election cycle, you would make them even. Okay.
I have a question.
Do you have to do that?
They might have it. Do you have the PowerPoint?
I do have a question. Does this have to be decided tonight? Okay. So I'd be clear.
This public hearing and the adoption of redistricting and the map and the sequence needs to be done tonight, please. We
thank you.
don't have any more time. We asked for time, but we don't have it.
So what's been suggested, I think, is that 1 in 5 get changed to 2 and 4.
Yeah, 1 in 5, we're changing to 2 and 4. We could just go 1, 3, 5, like that.
Do we want to, are there any public comments about this?
From my standpoint, if it's an issue like this, you need another meeting. From my standpoint, an issue like this, you need another meeting. I'm not going to object to that.
I beg to differ. We've asked you multiple times for extensions and we haven't gotten them. So we're very concerned about settlement and information we receive, sir.
Oh. Okay. There's some benefit to the minority community to have it sync with the school district. On the other hand, it seems harsh to term someone out if both are running for reelection. Your special district, you're part of an infrastructure. I think that's important, but your special district, I'm just gonna take the position that you've given special consideration. You heard me. I mean, ideally, sooner is better than later. And it would sync with the school district, which is a benefit to the minority community, but you heard me. And if I just don't want to have somebody thrown, sequenced out and so that's how I would approach it. You need another week to think about it, given that we're down to this issue. Again, I try to be flexible.
Okay.
Thank you.
So
Appreciate it.
as a point of information, it would require 2 weeks' notice and another public hearing, so it couldn't be done in a week.
Right, we would have to do it. If we don't do it tonight, we'd have to wait 2 weeks, so that's why we want to do it tonight. But, all right, so if there's no more discussion, could we get a motion?
So I'll make the motion to go with the consultant's recommendation. Where odd 2028, even 2026, and to confirm that that's.
No, I think you're saying 1 in 5 become 2 and 4 is what you're suggesting.
Yes.
Okay, just to confirm. Thank you.
Yes.
So just for the record, I can't see that map without my glasses. What I would like to say is District 1 will become District 2. District 5 will become District 4. District 2 will be District 1. And District 4 will become District 5. I know that sounds complicated, but it's captured on the record and now we have it accurate as to what you were looking for.
Okay, so I will concur that that motion is as read by the general manager.
And do we have a second for said motion? Okay, we have a second. No more is there any more discussion? Can we move on to a vote? All right. All right, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being patient. Thank you for all the hard work. Now we move on. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Now we're on to 10.2, introduction to amendment on section 29, subsection B on the ordinance regulation governing use of parks, recreation areas, and facilities.
It's me.
I apologize, I'm celebrating inside. Nicole, this is your item.
Thank you. We'd like to request by motion, you waive the full reading. So we can introduce amendment to ordinance 00103, regulations governing use of parks, recreation areas and facilities on section 29, skate parks facility in subsection B.
Are there any comments from the board? Director Hatcher?
No comment.
Director Lamnon? Hodges? Andrade? Then could we pass this by motion?
Everyone understands that what we're trying to do is just allow bikes and scooters into the skate park because it's being connected to a pump track in Tennyson, and currently those two conveyances are not allowed.
All right, so to reiterate, this would allow scooters and bikes to be on pump tracks that are listed as skateboard.
To be in the skate parks at all skate parks, so that would include Cannery and other places we have skate parks. Bikes and scooters would now be legal, which is okay. I think in the beginning of skate park history, people didn't like bikes because they felt like BMX bike pegs and other things damaged cement and finishes, but what we find is they really don't. And because we decided to be kind of cool at the advice of our skate park consultant, you're going to be able to skate through the wall of the skate park out onto the pump track and back into the skate park. It's kind of a cool novel idea, but what we realized is we were going to be breaking our own ordinances if we didn't allow the bikes to ride in the skate park and back out. So.
All right, well, thank you. Could I entertain a
I'll
motion?
move.
All right, thank you, Director Andrade. Do we have a second?
Yeah, second.
All right, please vote. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. On to unfinished business. Approval of the task order with MAC 5 for the East 14th Street portion of Ashland Grove Park.
Good evening, Honorable Board. Megan Tiernan, Capital Planning and Development Director. So this evening, the Board of Directors will consider approval of a task order with WRT Design for construction management services for the Ashland East 14th portion of the Ashland Grove project. MAC 5 is one of our on-call construction management firms. We put out an RFP in September and got 2 responses. It was very difficult to make a determination, but at the end of the day, we determined that MAC 5 is the best fit for this project. Just as a reminder, there are actually 2 separate projects, the Ashland East 14th and Ashland Mateo. Ashland Mateo is actually funded by a grant of to the Trust for Public Land. So concurrent with this, the Trust for Public Land will also be hiring MAC 5 for that portion. It's likely that the park will be constructed on two different timelines. And so it's very important that the construction management firm understand that. And that the large part of their job is to make sure that at the end of the day, it's one cohesive park. So with that, staff recommends that the Board of Directors approve task order with MAC 5 in the amount of $280,250 for construction management services for the Ashland East 14th Street portion of the Ashland Grove project. Thank you.
Do you have comments from the board? Director Hatcher.
Yeah, thank you, Megan, for presenting. One of my favorite pieces in here says work to begin immediately after approved. So thank you for the work and thank you for bringing this to us. No further comment.
I just want to say I'm relieved that it's going to be a coordinated project and things are going to line up and plans are going to be, you know, when it's done, it'll look like one piece on both sides. Thank you.
With that being said, could I entertain a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to move 11.1.
Could I have a second? All right. Please vote. All right, thank you, everyone. Motion passes unanimously. On to 11.2, adopting a resolution to approve by district map and sequence in order to transition from at-large to by district board of directors election. Didn't we already do this?
Nope. This is the resolution to actually go with all the actions you just took. We need to pass a resolution at the end of the day, and we weren't going to do it in a public hearing. We're going to do it afterwards. And so I present to you the man, the legend, the guy behind the fact that we now have 5 districts, Thomas Omolo.
Good afternoon, good evening, thank you. So the resolution will transition us from by district elections from at-large to by district elections. And I'll put in information about sequencing as well as from Paul. Paul will be able to make unsubstantive changes to the maps to fit with requirements from the county. Once this is passed, there will be a packet that is sent to the county's Office of Elections. The resolution will be included, this agenda will be included, and all the work, as well as discussion about why some communities of interest were maintained and some had to be broken up in order to receive the map that we have chosen. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas.
This resolution legitimatizes what you're doing to the county.
Questions, Director Lamden?
Yes, just can we also include the language about the intent is for all board members to represent all districts?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, we will pretty up the resolution if that's okay with you to include the 2 things he mentioned and the fact that our board of directors was committed to a fair and accurate process and we'll work by district and it's all at large right now. Yes, we will capture that for you.
With that being
Is that a
said,
motion? Well, no, I mean, I was gonna, because if he made a motion, I think, right?
I can make that a motion, sure.
that with an A or an E? Yes.
No, I just thought you, okay, I will move the staff recommendation with the inclusion of acknowledging that there may be non-substantive changes, all the other comments that Thomas Omolo made, and the intent, regardless of where they live, all or what district they represent, all board members will represent all of the district. Thank you.
I'll second.
I appreciate the desire to avoid balkanization of our, yeah, thank you. With that being said, please vote. We won't do it. Yes. With that being said, thank you everyone for moving forward. I think we're on to the fun part, the brief I love emphasizing that. Informational only reports from the board of directors and staff, including board member activities, committee reports, and reports by the board of directors related to meetings attended on behalf of the district or district's expense. I'm going to start with Director Andrade. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. Let's see. I was at the Fall Festival in Castro Valley at the Democratic booth and also at Peter's booth, and met a lot of people. You hear these comments, and one of them is more dog parks. That's one of them. And I could share later what some other comments, but it was good to hear people. We had a lot of support from everybody I talked to. I mean, I didn't hear any negative questions or anything. It was like, wow, you're running great job. So that was really positive. I was at the foundation meeting the other day, and I'm trying to think what we're thinking, what we're talking about, but I think we passed the. Wish I had something substantive to say about the foundation, except that we're making progress, and we wanted to pass the to accept us as the partner for the grant for the Creek Trail. And so they needed a qualified partner, and the foundation stepped in to be that qualified partner. So that was the biggest issue, I suppose. And I think that's it.
80th?
Hmm?
The 80th.
88, I'm sorry.
80th party.
Oh, I'll let you talk.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
Friday morning, we had a communication strategy meeting, and I was really impressed by staff and kind of blown away with all the communication that we have, and they're still working on more efficient ways to do it. So kudos to the staff for all the hard work they're doing. Keep it up.
Thank you. Director Lamden.
Sure, thank you. So yeah, the 80th party at the senior center was dynamite. Great turnout, great energy. Really appreciate that. And the theater gala was also really lovely, really wonderful energy. I know people are very excited to see the theater coming back and doing things, and the folks involved obviously are top notch. I think the one thing that people are still maybe looking for is that kind of local talent placed, because we're not doing the plays anymore, which I'm not, there's wise decisions behind that, but whether or not we do a local talent night or something that allows people also to get on the stage in addition to the community groups. But really exciting season coming up. So I was handing out brochures at the Rotary Club today because people keep asking what's going on at the theater. So it's great to have good answers for that. And then lastly, was at the, yeah.
Ask you a quick question about Rotary today.
Yeah.
What did you learn about Steve Love today?
He did, so our foundation director did his vocational talk today. I learned some interesting things about him. Yeah.
Is there anything you'd like to share that you learned about him today? Okay, you can tell me later.
I'll tell you later. Fascinating guy. If you haven't had a chance to talk to him, do so. That's what I'll say publicly about that. And lastly, went to Cherryland's Multicultural Night. Padres Unidos always puts this on. It's a great event, and appreciated the chance to be there. Thanks.
Director Hatcher.
Yeah, I just want to expound a bit. I attended the Hard Foundation meeting with Director Andrade, and led by our executive director, Steve Love, as well as tonight was here President Linda Cliff. And I mean, just to watch and see them in action and what they're doing with that board of directors. They talked about the youth ambassador program that some of the committees are working on. So really engaging some of the youth involved with that. And so it was exciting to see that in progress with and what Director Andrade also mentioned was the partnership, our director of Capital and Planning, Megan Tiernan and Michael C. Williams spoke with an incredible presentation geared for the foundation, specifically to the partnership that was to be voted on and passed that night for the EPA Community Change Grant. And I had my notes a $10 million potential, but I think it can go maybe even higher, that potential. $10 to $20 million. The foundation would be a partnership with HARD in seeking those funds. It was a Biden-Harris grant, federal grant of over $2 billion that's coming in. Just magical work that could be, realized by these not only partnerships, but seeking continued funding out in the community. That they passed out the I Love HARD brochures, which I put on your guys' desk there, just to be out in the community to find easy ways to really show folks to show what HARD is doing, specifically around, there's Sulphur Creek and some of the areas of the nature centers, but great ways to be able to donate to HARD and to be a part of the legacy of this. And we have such great representation there. I'm just excited for what that will bring in the future. I did attend the VIP at the Deer Creek, Deer View Park, that happened the other couple of weeks ago. And, just another great turnout. You always have the local folks from the community. You get to meet the people in the neighborhood and find to truly out what they want and also what they love about us. And it's great to hear and also to note. The Hayward Senior Center, I mean, when you have an event that encapsulates not only our programming, our facility, the volunteers, the staff, it's just, again, thanking Rick Sirianni and his, putting our 80th really in the forefront of people's eyes and minds and, presenting that in such a positive light. And of course, always have to attend. I'm a continued season ticket holder at the Morrison Theater, and I do miss talking about us as a production theater, but that model was a bit tough at that place. But to see what programming is happening, the multiple packages that are being offered for not only through the chorus, but through the variety of programming there, the cultural importance, what is being shown there, and the care by our staff, and great kudos to Alice and her presentation of the Douglas Morrison Theater and its future. So looking forward to that season. Thank you.
Well, you guys covered a lot of what I was going to cover. So it's funny because the Fall Festival is great. Thank you for attending and working with us on all that. I really found it as a barometer for the community about how we were. And there were a couple concerns that people had, like, additional dog park. And it's like, well, when is some of these things going to come out? And it was very impressive to actually have material and then hear them so excited. I heard so many people that came up and said, again, that, I worked for HARD way back when, or my dad or my brother did. And it was a big opportunity to hear from the community to reaffirm what we're doing, and we're headed in the right direction. And a lot of people were appreciative. It was pretty universal. So I that was very nice. I also loved the Douglas Morrison Theater, what Alice and Nevin are doing there. And it was so exciting to have something to show off. And so many people are talking about all these possibilities and the opportunities coming through it, and they could see it, and they could see the vision, and they could see where we're going. So I'm very appreciative of the work that they have done. Again, also the 80th Senior Center, the 80th party that we had at the Senior Center, what I really liked is that we had an opportunity to show off the facility. A lot of people wandered down, and then they got to see some of the mosaics, or they got to see some of the painting that had been done, or some of the, there were senior services there. There were all these other things that were fulfilled. Lots of art. They even got to see some of the carpentry stuff. Some people didn't even know that we had a woodworking room there. It was very good. I really appreciated all that. And then, yes, I also, when we had the VIP up in Columbia and Castro Valley, this is one of the first times I haven't done a lot of the work, because I ended up talking to a lot of the community members about things that I thought it was great to hear their feedback and to be encouraged about things. So once again, thank you, everyone. I think we're doing a great job. I really appreciate staff. I really appreciate having an opportunity to see some of the staff at a social event in the evening, that everyone is smiles and happy, and you get to appreciate the work that you're doing, get to see how the public appreciates it. Because sometimes you don't get that opportunity. So it was good. So thank you.
Good evening, Honorable Board and President Rosen, Jim Wheeler, General Manager, and I have nothing to report to you tonight, but I'm going to pass it down to I hope it really doesn't shock you, because I feel like I speak with you guys a lot. And I think you know pretty much everything that's going on from my world. The worlds you don't get to hear is what people tell me. So they're going to tell you what they tell me. And we're going to start with Ms. Roa. Do you have anything you need to share with the board?
Just that as a reminder, all of the fun dates and activities will be coming to you at the end of the week through your general manager's newsletter. So whatever dates they share, they'll come your way.
Good evening, Board of Directors. We are still very busy on the implementation work, closing out fiscal 24 in the old system and new, because some of the data is in the new system. Migrating data, we're fine-tuning processes, and of course, continuing to develop process documentation. And along that same line, I'm looking forward to attending my first, and we'll be bringing staff to the Tyler Enterprise ERP Users Group meeting for the area, which is being hosted by the city of Hayward. So we'll be able to meet the other clients in the area. And there's about 4 different breakout sessions. So that's happening tomorrow. And I'm pretty excited about that, to meet some other folks and see how they're doing things. And
So does Hayward use,
yeah,
I was just gonna check. So does the city of Hayward use Tyler?
yes.
Oh,
Mhm.
I was unaware of that. Oh, so you guys can
Yeah, and I think
hang out
it's-
together.
Right, it's part networking, obviously, with other users and learning, because everyone can, you can figure things differently. So kind of finding out how other people are doing it. They do have like 4 different sessions with 3 different topics. So a lot of it is because it's such a wide family of products. And we're only on one, the financial system. So it'll be interesting to kind of see a little bit about the other offerings they have. And but mainly, yeah, I think it's going to be great to connect with some of the other users. Yeah, that's it for me.
Good evening, Honorable Board of Directors. Chris Peterson, Parks and Facilities Maintenance Director. Few quick updates for you. So if you've driven by and you've noticed McConaughey has a new roof, we've finalized that project. I would have brought it tonight. There was one item that we had to do for cleanup on it, so we'll bring it to the next board meeting for closeout. Looks good though. They did a good job. They had one issue with the stained glass window that got cracked, and the contractor was able to actually find something that glass that looked very similar to the existing and got that replaced. So overall, it looks good. So I'm working with my staff. We're kind of doing a complete audit of all the water and sewer bills right now. We found some anomalies that might have some huge cost savings attached. I'll give you a further report when we get those done.
Is the city charging us double for water from their system for their parks?
We found some like over meters that we were being charged for larger meters than we actually had in the ground. So yeah, we might have a little refund coming. The Madrano property, the city of Hayward has completed all the site work. They've got the BMPs in place, replaced the fencing. They are working with one issue with one neighbor, I think, about some of the K-rail that was installed on his property during the flood, and working through that. And then they're going to be handing that over to us shortly, completely. We also, so if you see a bunch of orange vests running around on the hillside, we do have a survey starting 9/23 to 9/26 and 9/30 to 10/3. We contracted with Kieran Wright to do the Alta and SPS survey of the property. So we should have some answers back on some of the questions we've had up there and actually know exactly where our property lines are. Other than that, that's it for me. Thank you.
Good evening, President Rosen and Honorable Board of Directors, Adrian Lee Bird, Director of Recreation, Arts and Community Services. We had a really busy, fun weekend, and it was great to see all of you at the 80th birthday party at the Senior Center, as well as the season preview gala at the DMT. Beyond that, Friday night, we actually had a movie at Meek Park showing Super Mario and had almost 100 folks there. On Saturday, we had a nice group for our VIP event at Palmacia Park. We were also at the Mexican Independence Day celebration downtown on Saturday with our mobile rec. And on Saturday, we also brought a van of teenagers out to go hike at Tilden Park. And then on Sunday, we were at the airport open house. We had 150 unique climbers at our rock wall with mobile recreation. So it was a really fun weekend and lots going on. Thank you.
Good evening, Honorable Directors. Megan Tiernan, Capital Planning and Development Director. Not a lot of big news, just still ongoing work with the energy efficiency project. The roof here is complete, but they're still working on the mechanical systems. The DO painting job is complete on the exterior. I think Shoreline Interpretive Center also, I think the new roof is installed, but they were also doing the siding on the building as well. That was in the quote, so that was a little bonus. And that's about it for the highlights.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a charrette or something at the Mount Eden Mansion?
Oh, there was a kind of an open house style meeting at Mount Eden Park for the renovation project. Haven't gotten a full update on the responses. The questions we were asking were, did they want us to convert 2 of the tennis courts to pickleball? And then we were introducing the idea of the new outdoor fitness courts, but I don't know the results yet.
If I might, I was remiss in reporting the completion of the painting of the district office. I don't know if you ever go around the front, but all the handrails, the Hayward Area Recreation and Park District steps out of the building now. It's not all kind of blended. I think they did an excellent job, and I'm very, very proud of Diane Hardy for managing that project and it coming out and finding. I appreciate that they went back out to bid because they knew we could do better. We found a great company at a great price who did a great job and was very helpful and responsive. So the next thing you can look forward to is new landscape across from the gate up in the corner all the way down around the front. We will be re-landscaping the front of the DO to look like the best park in Hayward.
With that being said, I'd like to adjourn this meeting.